care a little bit because I want to be eye to eye with you guys. What's up? This is my first podcast doing it by myself. When I'm by myself, I want to talk about my take on spirituality. Well, it's not really traditional spirituality. I would say it's more psychology. Um, I spent my time in college studying psychology. That was my major, and my emphasis was on addiction recovery. I did like all my research papers on addiction recovery, and I also worked at a rehab that was substance abuse addiction recovery. It was 12 steps focused, and I loved all of it. I was so interested in it. I was like trying to crack the code. I was trying to figure out the heart of addiction recovery. And I actually came to the conclusion that the heart of addiction recovery or addiction is trauma. And that's everybody's favorite topic of discussion. Not. Seems like most people try to avoid talking about trauma because it's so heavy. But I think it's so important to talk about it for that reason and discuss ways of how we can let go of negative patterns that are holding us back in life. One of my favorite guys that talks about trauma is this guy. His name is Gabor Mate. If you guys are interested, you should check him out. I think he was one of the first people that kind of pushed the agenda that all addiction stems from childhood trauma. And he actually goes as far as to say that all illnesses stem from childhood trauma, which is a big claim, obviously, but there's, I think, some truth to that. So I attempted to write a book that explained all of my accumulated knowledge, I guess, of trauma. And actually, it all came together after a pretty powerful psilocybin mushroom trip. This happened probably a few months ago. I tripped with my homies. We went up hiking and we were chilling by a lake. It was a fucking blast. And at the end of that trip, I got into my car and I was heading back to my place. And I was in this kind of weird state of consciousness, I would say, where I felt really liberated from the mushrooms. It's hard to explain to someone what that feeling is like if they haven't tried mushrooms, but it's like you get a break from the chatter in your head, and you get a break from negative patterns of behavior and speaking and thinking, yeah. And it's awesome. I love it. And so I was experiencing that euphoria, and I was coming out of it, and I could feel myself sort of slipping back into these habitual patterns that I always do, that I was wanting to let go of. And it was very intense. I would say I felt PTSD very intense in that moment, and honestly, you had a fucking breakdown. I was just in my car and I was like crying and shit, and I just wanted to feel whatever I was feeling. I had like this intense pressure in my chest. And a couple days later, I wrote this book. It's not done yet, I'm still working on it, but I'd love to talk about it with you guys. So my plan is just to go chapter by chapter. Each chapter will be an episode. The way that I wrote it, it's kind of like broken down into like a philosophical dictation with like verses. I didn't even mean to do that, but that's just kind of how it came about. So I'll just hop right into it. I'll read a few verses, stop, talk about what I mean, explain it a little bit, and then move on. The first chapter is about will. Not necessarily free will, but just why sometimes we feel like we can't act out a will that we want to. True and authentic will. So, yeah, I'll just hop right into it. I am God's creation sent to create. His will is my will. But how come I don't know my will? Your soul loves your parents. Your parents' souls love you. But their biology, chemistry, DNA sequence were damaged by PTSD. Do you know what PTSD is? I can feel the effects right now. A racing heart, shaky hands, trembling in fear. This is correct. Do you know why you feel so much fear? Just the thought that I can actually find out what is making me scared makes me still scared. You're scared because when you find out, you have to change. I want to know. I'm done being scared. Will you please guide me to the truth? Okay, so a few points of emphasis. There's plenty of evidence, scientific evidence, that trauma does affect your biology, chemistry, and DNA sequence. I don't really want to get into that here, but if you're interested, there's countless articles about it. When I say PTSD, I mean a bunch of different things. This book has 10 different definitions for it. But one of them is being in a state of fight or flight. And the way that I experience fight or flight is racing heart and shaking body. What else? Yeah, it's set up kind of in a way where almost a dialogue between, I would say, myself when I feel like I'm in this fight or flight, and my higher self or inner being, I would say, kind of giving guidance on how to move on from that. Yeah, so let's move on. Oh yeah, the last thing I want to say about this, I talk about soul a lot and parents a lot, because I don't think, well, maybe this isn't true, but I don't think parents ever want to give their kids PTSD, you know. I know my parents love all of their kids, me and my siblings, but we did have traumatic experiences, and that's not unique to us, or not unique to us at all. So the soul, I like to say, the soul always wants to give love. The soul is love. But the soul sometimes is in a body that is damaged. I don't know if I want to say damaged by PTSD, but has PTSD. And that kind of creates, especially for a child that's learning to grow and be a human being, that's difficult when you're getting, mixed signals. Let's move on. It means the soul loved your parents' souls and vice versa, but their biology, chemistry, DNA structure, this will now be referred to as physical makeup, did not reflect that type of love. That eases my body to hear that, yet I do not understand what that means. It means their physical makeup trained your brain and nervous system that PTSD means love. That brings clarity to my thought, yet I do not understand what that means. That means when you see souls you love, your physical makeup does PTSD and gives the soul you love PTSD. I know that's true, and that's unbearable to hear. How do I fix this? You must acknowledge your soul and your physical makeup are not connected in a loving way. Let's see. I realize that when I'm trying to make a point in this book, I take it to an extreme. I'm doing that to make a point. So when I say whenever your soul sees another soul it loves, it gives it PTSD, obviously I don't think that's true. but it is the case often. I can attest to that. Sometimes you don't even mean to. You're trying to give love, but it comes out in a way that you didn't expect or didn't want. And I think ultimately that comes down to your physical makeup not reflecting the love of your soul. So let's talk about what to do about that. How did that even happen? Because the soul was conditioned to think that love was felt in the body. The truth is, love is where your soul rests. This brings me extreme comfort. Why doesn't my soul always rest in love? The soul is conditioned to attack love. Attacking love is called PTSD. My attack is strong and my attack is insane. How do I stop my attack? If you observe it closely, it will fold and reveal itself as a cover-up. It was a cover-up for fear. Okay, so I kind of like the idea that love is not felt in the body, and that's a little abstract, but I like it because if you conceptualize love as being inside of the body, there's kind of this tendency to try to grasp for it and try to hold on to it and make sure it doesn't leave. But the very fact of that tension and trying to hold it is what is blocking that love and that experience of love. I have a theory that without any of that blockage or any of that PTSD, any of that tension, the natural state of every human being is a natural state of love or a natural state of grace. The soul was conditioned to attack love. Maybe. I'm not saying that's true, but I think according to my conditioning, my specific conditioning that I was raised in, I think that is true. But to not be scared of your attack on love, observe it, because it is a cover-up, and what the attack is fear. Moving on. With your new ability to rest in love and knowledge strong enough to obliterate any attack that comes up, observe the energy of the fear transform. The soul can now rest in love and the body in peace. In this new state of consciousness, allow the vibration of your body to rise and for your brain to turn on. There will be no feelings of rush or escape. Marinate in your silence. Your physical makeup is now reflecting the restfulness of your soul in an ocean of love. You can now meet all souls with unconditional love and freedom, independent of their state of consciousness. With this conviction, your will parallels the Creator. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so I talked about this idea of resting in love while you observe your attack or observe your fear. I would say that's one form of meditation, just to try your best to rest in love and let the fear do whatever it needs to, because if you're resting in love, it can't last. And it transforms. And fear is ultimately energy. Let's see what else. New state of consciousness. I think I call it a new state of consciousness because it really is a totally different way of being when you're not in your fight or flight. It's a different way of thinking, it's a different way of talking, it's a different way of interacting with everybody you come into contact with. it's better, way, way, way better. And there is this sense of, how would you describe it? In like an increase in your vibration inside of your body and your brain. I felt like my brain through as I've been in my healing process has in a sense turned on. It's how would I explain that? Turned on in the sense of feels more free. We'll go with that. And the benefit of doing all of this is that you can now meet everybody with this new capacity of love and freedom inside of you, and you're sharing that with everybody. And when you're acting in accordance with this, your will parallels the creator, whatever that means to you. Yeah, man, I don't even know if this shit makes sense. It makes sense to me. I hope this is interesting to you guys. That's the first chapter. We'll call that the end of the first episode that we got. The next chapter that we'll talk about goes over trauma self and true self. It's a really good one. Yeah.